Hello, and welcome to our demo of setting up an RDP load balancer on the Nova ADC platform. As you can see here, I'm on our Nova website on the RDP webpage, and I'm going to log into my account quickly. You can register for a free account, and you can get a community account which will allow you to deploy up to 5 nodes completely for free, so please feel free to try this out yourself. But on my account, I'm going to deploy a brand new node to do this. Now, a node is a system that we control through Nova in order to put various ADC types on that node. In this example, we're going to do an RDP one, remote desktop, but you could do HTTP, HTTPS, any TCP traffic really, and you can see an example here of some of the nodes on my account. Now, if you were adding a custom node, you would just do that here on the Add a Node menu option at the bottom, and you would put in any name of any node you might want, and it will then give you instructions to install that on Linux, in a container, or on a VM or hypervisor like VMware or KVM or whatever you might be running. Instead, we have several public cloud platforms that we use, and I will just use Nova to deploy directly into one of those. In this example, I'm going to use DigitalOcean, but you can see we've got an Azure account linked here, EC2, a couple of DigitalOcean ones, and we've got this test DigitalOcean one here which I'll use. So this has just got my API credentials for this account, and we will launch a new Nova node where we'll then be able to set up our RDP load balancer on that node, and this will deploy into your account. So this is, an actual private account with public cloud, a public cloud host, and we've got the API credentials for that. So here I can just say RDP node, and we can launch it in New York. That's where these example web servers are. We can specify the size we want. This is obviously for DigitalOcean. Various other cloud providers like Amazon or Azure or GCP will have different options. And then we can specify what performance we need. Now I'm just going to deploy the cheap $5 a month droplet. It'll be plenty for our demo, and generally will probably be enough for most RDP use cases. And we'll say that we'll deploy one. So you could deploy multiple if you wanted to have this highly available. You could deploy to multiple data centers and share it. And if you need East Coast, West Coast, whatever you might want to do. But let's just launch one. And this is exactly the same as installing it manually, like I mentioned, with a VM image or on an existing Linux server. But this just integrates with the cloud for us and lets us just deploy it directly here without having to install anything else. So this will take about 30 to 60 seconds to come online. And that will provision a new cloud instance in our DigitalOcean account. By our, I mean as the client, yourselves, and we will then be able to use that. But while that's happening, we can start to set up our ADC. Now, the ADC is going to be what actually load balances remote desktop for you. And to do that, we can come here and go to backends. Under ADC's backends, that's the first thing we want to set up, right? Is where is the traffic going to be sent eventually? What are your origin servers, your actual RDP servers? And you can create that here. Now, you've got a bunch of options. For most people, they'll probably just use simple, which is that you're going to put in the IP addresses and ports of your RDP servers. You can also use Cloud API if you want to do service discovery. Let's say you want to point to an Amazon AMI ID, maybe a tag on DigitalOcean, things like that. But we can obviously just configure them with IPs and ports. You've got service discovery and all of that. But let's say RDP backend, and we'll create this. Now it's going to ask us for the IPs and ports of our servers. So we can say here, well, in this example, these don't really exist, but we'll just say, they're in our subnet as these two servers, and you can add any number you want here, obviously, and they'll both be primary, so they're both going to run. They've both got equal weights, but you can configure that, and we'll update that. So now we have this backend that when it receives traffic, it will send it to 10.10.0.100 and 10.10.0.101. Those are our two RDP example servers in this case, and we'll now be able to use this backend in an actual ADC. And you can have many backends, so you can have different backends by data centers or whatever you might need. Now, while we're doing that, I believe our DigitalOcean node, the new droplet we launched, have come online, and it has. So that'll be ready for us to use. And if we come back and look at nodes, we should see we've got some more now. And we do here, RDP node 0. You can see it's online now, 0% CPU usage. We can have a quick look in there. see where it is. We can see it got stuck in New York as we expected, obviously, and some memory usage stats, basically no connections, a little bit about the server, and specifically the IP it was assigned, which we'll use once we actually want to take this thing into production. But it's online now and ready to be used. Now we've set up our ADC backend, so the next step is setting up the ADC front end, right, where we'll accept the traffic. And you can see here we've got examples of actual websites, but obviously for this we're going to do RDP. So we come in here and we can say RDP inbound. Obviously you can name it anything you like, and we will choose RDP. So you can customize it however you want, right? You could do this as a TCP group, but RDP is going to give you some additional functionality, which I'll show you in a second, specifically designed for remote desktop, remote gateway, connection brokers, all that kind of stuff. But you can load balance anything with Nova. And I'll submit this, and then we'll start to configure it. So the first thing an RDP ADC asks us is what RDP type are we looking at here, right? RDS servers, this is probably your most common, and is also very kind of vendor neutral. This will just be your default for when you're using a custom remote desktop or an open source version or whatever you might want to do, and that's why it's selected. Or if you're going directly to Microsoft RDP servers. You can also choose connection brokers if that's what you're load balancing, or RD Web Gateway, right? So this is entirely up to you to select. I'm just going to say RDS service for now. And then for listen and backends, this is where we want to accept traffic and we want to send it. So you can see here we're going to listen on port 3389 for inbound traffic. That'll be on the nodes that we deploy this to. And then where do we want to send it? So we'll send it to RDP backend. Now, the reason you can select multiple here is because you could send it to multiple and share it out, or in the case where you can do some kind of advanced routing like a web load balancer, you might want to say, well, send this domain name there and send that domain name there and so on. For us, though, we're going to say whatever we get in, let's just send it to the RDP backend. Health checks, we're just going to leave it on layer 4. How many checks that fail to mark it as down, how many checks that pass to mark it as up, how often do we want to check, very standard stuff, all the defaults are always fine. And then any performance limits for this. So, do we want a number of connections per second, a maximum connections is always a good idea to set. You might know that you have a certain number of RDP users and there's no need to ever allow more than that. Let's say perhaps we want 100 at any point in time. I've done 1,000. And then we can say save. So if I save this now, this is where one of the biggest differences with Nova that you might not be familiar with comes in, which is that actually we've just defined a service, right? We've said we want to accept traffic and we want to send it to this backend that we spoke about, but we haven't put it anywhere yet. That comes to deploying. So we now say, okay, what nodes do we want to attach this to? And you can attach it to any number of nodes you want. So you can attach it to multiple if you need multiple, or for high availability reasons, or whatever you want. In our example, we've set up RDP node 0, and that's the one we want to use, right? So we can attach it to that. And once we do that, it will link this ADC to those nodes, and they will always keep connected, right? So we'll see stats from them, we'll be able to change the config, and it will automatically change, etc. And the first time we do this, it takes about 15 seconds. That took 10, a little bit quick today. And then after that, about 2 seconds to deploy a change. But this is now live, right? Of course, the RDP servers I'm using don't actually exist. So you can see here we've picked up 2 offline upstreams, right? It's down because those servers don't exist. But on others, you can see obviously that there's online servers. But if I came in here, we could see which node it was deployed to. There you go. What some of its stats are, any throughput, the latency, and things like that. And we see response times from the backends and your ADC requests, and you can view what IPs are hitting the service. All that kind of stuff as needed, right? You get a lot of data. In an environment where you've got actually live data, you can see you start to see a lot more data and information, and you can graph the performance and throughput of everything, and you get alerts for everything and so on. Now, that will have been attached to this node, our RDP node 0, right? And if we were to go to this IP address, we would be load balanced through to those RDP servers. Of course, they don't exist, like I mentioned, so it would just be offline, but it's good to go. That's all there is to it, to setting up a load balancer for your remote desktop. Obviously, you need the multiple servers behind, and then you manage it, edit it, control it all in here. So you can come in here, see your settings, change things if you want, or you could go to backends and edit your RDP backend, and that will also automatically change, right? So if I was to remove one of these, or maybe make this a backup, so we only want to use this one if the main one goes offline. we can update that, and it will automatically be rolled out to any nodes that are attached. So we can actually manually have a look and see if that's actually happening by going to ADC's deployments, and we'll see here that it recently deployed again 6 seconds ago. 8 seconds now, and so you can see it automatically just keeps everything in kind of sync for us, and we can manage that here. We could then deploy multiple other ones in other locations. We could deploy another node for web load balancing, or we could attach an ADC to this existing one, whatever we might want to do. And that's a quick look at how you would set up RDP load balancing. Obviously, like I mentioned, it supports connection brokers, RD web, standard RDP protocol, and if you've got anything really strange, you can just use a TCP load balancer in the exact same way and pass that traffic through. As I mentioned, everything I've shown you here today is actually available for free. So if you're a small business trying to scale up at the moment, this is obviously a great service and very easy to use. So please go ahead and have a try. You can get to it on nova.snapt.net. When you go to the home page, you'll see there's a login link, and you can register for a free account there at any time. Thank you for your time, and have a good rest of the day.